You're listening to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast, a show that's dedicated to cultivating intention, awareness, and flow in business and life. Join your host, Nicole Harlow, and other like-minded business owners in the Spirited Entrepreneur community over at www.thesepodreview.com.
I saw the sun.
Hi, and welcome to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Harlow, and today we're going to be chatting about taking your power back from the internet. So I received this question from a listener, Kat, the other day on my voicemail. Let's check it out.
Hey Nicole, this is Kat from San Diego. I was wondering if you had any advice at all for managing screen time and balancing your internet time with real life. Thanks, bye.
Hey Kat, thank you so much for calling in. That's a great question, and first of all, I just want to tell you that you are not alone. This is something that myself and a lot of people struggle with. And I know that over the last few years, I've been really consciously trying to, with intention and mindfulness, create some healthy boundaries and some healthy tips, productivity tips and hacks to help take my own power back. And it started with a few pretty profound mindset shifts too. So in today's episode, what I wanted to share are some tips, mindset shifts and hacks that I personally use to consciously take my power back from the internet. And I guess at its essence, what I really want to do with this episode is to give you the tools and power to control an issue that for so many people feels really out of control in their lives. I mean, this could be something like having just mountains of emails or feeling really overwhelmed by social media for business or your personal life. So I just wanted to briefly outline the topics that I'm going to cover, just so you have an idea of where we're going to go together in this conversation. I'll be covering the topics of power, control, curation, boundaries, and tools and techniques. In the tools and techniques section, I'm going to be recommending a few tools that I personally use, and you'll find links to those tools on the show notes page, which you can find at thesepod.com/episodes/004. So first off, what does it mean to take your power back from the internet? How I see it is taking your power back from the internet, shifting your mindset to see the internet as a productivity or even a pleasure tool rather than the core of your business. So what I really mean by this is I think that it's easy to get overwhelmed by the internet and by social media and all of the content. I mean, on the internet, we create more content every day than the whole of human history up until this point. So that's a lot of blog posts and tweets and updates and Facebook status updates and all of this stuff. So I understand, I feel it, I can feel it myself too, that it's really easy to get and feel powerless when it comes to the internet, especially if you're running an online business and you know that you need to, or even if you have a brick and mortar business and you feel like you have to be online and that you have to have some kind of online presence and some kind of social media presence, that can lead to a lot of overwhelming feelings. And so I wanted to start off specifically just addressing a very simple but a very profound mindset shift. And that is realizing that you are the one who's in control. You are the one that has the power over this experience of the internet. And it's just like most things in your life where you do have a lot of power when it comes to your relationship with the internet and social media, it is so important to always remind yourself, always keep in the forefront of your mind that you are the one that is leading the relationship. And at any point, if you're ready to have a breakup, you can have a breakup. Or just a break, even just a weekend break, or some time by yourself. It doesn't have to be a 24/7 in your face relationship. And the other thing that I like to think about when it comes to shifting the mindset is really just realizing, cultivating a sense of appreciation for the tool. I have a deep appreciation for the internet. It has empowered me in almost all of the important decisions and the important relationships and the important things in my life. Whether it's personal, as in my best friends are kind of flung all over the world, in Australia and America, and I live in Malta in the Mediterranean, and my friends are everywhere. Whether it's my mastermind group for business or it's just, some besties that I want to keep in touch with. The internet allows me to chat with my mom over Skype or pick up, get on FaceTime and message one of my clients at any time really easily, as long as I have, my phone or my iPad or Wi-Fi. Well, Wi-Fi is very necessary. But, I just cultivate a very deep appreciation for the tools that have allowed me to grow my business, because 9 years ago, when I was getting started in business, things like Twitter didn't exist, and Facebook was still kind of growing, from the post-college years, when it was just for campuses. So I wasn't actually utilizing many online tools when I first started out. I'm kind of back in the day of, I remember printing out flyers and posting them around the neighborhood for my yoga classes. And now I just appreciate all of the different mediums that exist online, like podcasting, for example. A really great way to get out there and just start connecting with people. And I don't know where you're at right now when you're listening, but it's really cool for me to think that you're, sitting somewhere flung far in the world. I'm not sure if you're in Malta. I highly doubt that you are in Malta, even though I know I have some friends here that probably will be listening. So I also think the conversation about shifting your mindset is supported and helped by also including in the conversation just the issue of addressing pervasive feeling of FOMO that so many people have, that keeps you or them feeling really, really disempowered in your relationship with social media and just the internet in general. FOMO being fear of missing out, for anybody who's not familiar with the acronym. And FOMO is really you've experienced it when you get into that, and you probably have experienced this at some point, when you get into one of those social media loops where first you're on Facebook, then you're at the email, then you're on Twitter, then you're on Instagram. Just tiny little dopamine hits here and there, combined with some stressful experiences of a negative email or something that you didn't necessarily want to see, only to just go back and complete the loop again and again and again, and then realize that you haven't achieved anything that you wanted to achieve over the last 45 minutes or an hour or something. So it's really important to shift your mindset away from FOMO and into a space where you reclaim your own power and you reclaim your own time. Because let's face it, FOMO can be a super productivity killer, for sure. So when it comes to shifting your mindset, taking into account the importance of making intentional strides to try to eradicate that feeling of FOMO, I do it really by just making my life friggin' awesome. As awesome as I can. I don't have much of a fear of missing out on other things because I'm too busy creating experiences that are awesome. I think the more experiences that you have in the so-called real world, the less concerned that you'll actually be with fear of missing out. Because you won't be missing out. You'll be creating really awesome experiences just on your own. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is control. It's kind of similar to power. It's another mindset shift that I think is really important. And this is about reclaiming your control over the content that you choose to see. There's a duality that for sure exists on the internet, and there's no escaping that. But there's no escaping the reality that there's a duality. But what you can escape from is the constant bombardment of the negative things that you see on the news, or a toxic friend that posts really annoying statuses all the time that always like kind of get you in a really kind of sassy or stressful mood. And that sort of piggybacks right onto the next topic, which is one that I am really passionate about. And it's one of my favorite topics to talk about when it comes to the internet and personal power, which coincidentally is something that I talk to my friends and clients a lot, and my partner a lot. I kind of see it as the internet is like a huge buffet, and you can pick anything that you want. But recognizing that you don't need to eat everything or else you'll get sick. So you can pick and choose things like healthy snacks versus really unhealthy things. I mean, you can fill yourself a huge plate of the greasiest, unhealthiest things from like reading comments from trolls, or I don't know, spending 2 hours on BuzzFeed or something like that, or just getting stuck in a social media loop. Or you can use the wonderful tools that exist on the internet, like listening to educational podcasts, or watching a TED Talk, or connecting with someone far away that you really love, or joining Facebook groups that are empowering for you and empowering for your business, and really just choosing where you put your time. And I love this idea of curation because the internet is this huge buffet. There is the opportunity to pick from the internet, curate an internet experience specific to you that involves all of the things that you love. And so I try to consistently curate the entire internet for myself, like you would curate your Pinterest boards. So for as much as I can, because sometimes things do filter through, I try to curate things like my Facebook feed, which we'll get into that a little bit further on in the future, but I try to curate like my Facebook feed, things like my Twitter account, and even when I see online, the websites that I visit and things like that, I curate them the best that I can to make sure that what I'm seeing when I go online is really only what I want to see. And I tend to make conscious and intentional choices to either block out the rest of it, or really just avoid, like whether I'm consciously blocking it out using tools that I'll describe a little bit later on, or if I'm just consciously not going to those parts of the buffet and feasting off of things that will either make me feel unhealthy or will make me feel unhappy. So I think it's really important to realize that you are the curator of your very own internet, of your very own digital experience. And you do have the power and control to take some steps to curate it so that your world that you see on the internet more closely reflects the world that you want to see in your real life. And yeah, as we go a bit further into the podcast, I'm going to talk about some of the tools, apps, and techniques and little hacks that I use that help me better curate my digital experience. So the last thing before I get to the tips and techniques is just taking a little bit of time to talk about boundaries. And boundaries are really important when it comes to taking your power back from the internet and having a balance between the work that you do online and your quote-unquote real life outside of the screen. I have found that creating boundaries was especially important for me in the work that I do digitally, doing web design and working with clients. When I first started out, I have to admit that I didn't create much in the way of boundaries, and my stress level really suffered and my personal life suffered because of it. Because I was just working all the time. If I was awake, I was on the computer. And if I was on the computer, I was working. And so I was working 12, 14, 16 hours a day, most days of the week, and not really taking many breaks. And there was a few things that I think that I was doing the wrong way at the time that I see that I've sort of made some strides around. And one was not having an email address that was specifically there for my business. I was just having personal emails and professional emails all come to the same email address and all come to my phone. So at any point during the day, when I had clients that were all over the world, they weren't in their time zone. They weren't emailing me at 11 p.m., but I was receiving it at 11 p.m. in my time zone. So that would just add some extra stress to my life because it's hard to at the time it was hard to turn off that receiving the emails and feeling like, okay, I feel obligated to respond to this right away, even though I know it's not an emergency. I just want to make sure that I'm doing a good job. So as I've kind of moved forward into my business, I've set up some real boundaries. One important boundary was creating actual office hours, open office hours for myself, and communicating that with clients to say, okay, well, I will be, answering emails between 9 and 5 p.m. of Monday through Thursday, and then communicating with clients that Fridays I take Friday off to work specifically on my own business. So I'm working on the business rather than just in the business constantly. And the first, few years of doing this, I wasn't really looking up from my business at all. I was just kind of like an ant sort of running around and doing all of the grunt work and not having any time to have really high level conversations and some visionary thinking time. And in a future episode, I'd really like to go over my daily routine, my weekly routine, and how I run my business from both doing high level visionary strategic things and visionary thinking, but also getting high level and just normal level productivity done in my day, from social media to liaising with clients, getting client work done, and then creating my own content, and how I do it all in a normal work week and not go crazy.
You say I'm so hard until I know what I hold take off your dress.
So just keep your eyes and ears open for one of the future episodes where I will go through my weekly schedule and my morning routine, which I've been getting up at 5 a.m. And I've been doing this now for 2 weeks of a 5 a.m. start. And just to put it in perspective, I used to sleep until 10 a.m. and start my work at maybe like 11 a.m. with my perspective of like, well, I'm an entrepreneur and I get to do what I want. So it's a really, really big shift for me to start waking up at 5 a.m. And it's really transformed so many aspects of my life, and I really will appreciate the opportunity to get into it a bit deeper and further, and I'll quote some of the literature that I've been reading about it and the studies, and let you know how it's been working in my own experience. But I'll say right now that just to let you know, it's working really well, and I'm really enjoying just having the peace and the clarity and the time early in the morning, that calmness, waking up in the ambrosial hours when it's dark and it's just starting to get light. I never thought I could appreciate waking up early so much. So yeah, we'll get into that at some point in the future. But right now, what I really want to do is I wrote out this list of techniques, tips and techniques that I do personally that I think will really benefit taking your power back from the internet. And at the end of it, we'll get into some tools, actually, things that you can download and use. But these are just going to be like tips and tricks and hacks and things. So some things that I do. The first thing that I do is every night, without fail, I put my iPhone, I put it on airplane mode at night. And when I wake up, I keep it on airplane mode and I don't check social media or emails immediately. I make sure that I do my morning routine before I check into social media. Now, what I love about this is that there's no beeps or anything that keep me awake at the end of the night, but more than that, I just love to have the boundary or the barrier in place between work is done, social media is done, internet is done. Put the phone on airplane mode. And I do use my phone as my alarm, which is why I keep it by my bed. If I didn't use it as an alarm, I definitely would keep it in the other room. I keep all of my other devices in the other room in a drawer. So when I'm finished my work, the laptop goes away, the iPad goes away. I've got a geeky little clipboard that I write on to keep myself kind of in an analog schedule so I know what I need to do for the day. I put all of those things away in the drawer, and they stay in the drawer until I'm ready to take them out the next day. I really like the idea of having a bit of compartmentalization where I just here's the work, and now the work is going away. So I really love at night just turning off the phone. And that's when I read. So before I get into bed, I make sure that I hardly ever use my phone in bed. I do have a little bit of a secret ritual that on Saturdays, I kind of let myself sleep in. Sometimes it's Sundays, it depends, but at some point in the weekend, I let myself sleep in a little bit later. And as a treat, I let myself turn on my phone while I'm still in bed, get hooked up to the Wi-Fi, and go on Instagram and check things on Facebook. And what people normally do every single day of their life, I keep it as a treat for myself for the weekend, where I'm like, okay, you've done all your work this week, and now you can lay in bed and just zone out and read a BuzzFeed article or see what so-and-so has posted on Instagram. And you know what? I really appreciate it because I just I create the strict boundaries during the week. So when I have a weekend, I get a little bit of treat, and then I just get to lay in bed and waste an hour on my phone, guilt-free. So that's the first thing that I do. The second thing that I do is I make sure to turn off all notifications. This is like especially poignant for mobile phones and mobile apps and things. Whenever I download a new app and they ask me, can they send me push notifications? I always say no. And you can go into your settings and you can change your notification settings. But I found this is really important because it helps me stay away from the social media cycle. It's really easy to go and check when you find that like, oh, so-and-so's liked your picture on Instagram. And the next thing that you know, you're on Instagram. I mean, it makes sense. Like, why? Of course, you're going to go on Instagram. So I turn off all my notifications. The only thing that I do get notified by right now is if I get a text message, for example. And a lot of times I keep my phone on airplane mode while I'm working just so I'm not distracted. I'll have it with me just because I use it for the calculator, the time, or my Pomodoro timer or something like that. But for the most part, I just keep it on airplane mode for a few hours while I'm working. But I just found it really important to keep the notifications off. So things like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Skype, etc. I have all of the notifications turned off for those things. So the only things I really get notified for, and even games, like games, apps will try to tell you, you haven't been on for 4 hours, you know. I just downloaded Duolingo for learning Spanish. And I didn't realize that if you don't like log in very frequently, they'll send you a push notification. I got it the other day and was like, gotta turn this off. Because I just don't want to be, I don't want to be beholden to my phone beeping at me all the time. I actually keep my phone on vibrate or silent mode too, just so it's a little less distracting. This is one way that I take my power back, you know, turning off the notifications and saying, no, I'll choose when I want to use these things rather than having you beep at me constantly and try to steal my attention. I mean, I consider my attention very important. I consider my attention paramount in what I want to achieve, not only as a business owner, but as a human, in a constant state of bettering myself, of becoming a better human, of having a better body, of having a better mind. If I can't do that if my phone is beeping at me all day long. I don't know how you feel about it, but the more that I unplug and I turn off the notifications, the better work that I can do. And I've really seen that in my own life, and I'm sure that if you implement at least some of these techniques that you'll see it too. So the other thing about turning off notifications is I did this in Facebook. I was really, really ruthless about doing this in Facebook. So I join a lot of groups. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and I have my own Facebook group, the Spirited Entrepreneurs Mastermind, which I love and you should join. I turn off all group notifications, and I also unfollow posts. So, you know, you get those notifications in the right-hand sidebar, and they'll say, you know, such and such is posted in this group, such and such is posted in this group. I don't want to see any of that stuff. I go into groups when I want to, and I will just like scroll through and see what people have been talking about. But it's total notification overload. And that's one of the smartest decisions that I made, was to turn off my notifications. Right now, when I go into Facebook, the only notifications that I do see are if someone liked a post that I put, if someone has mentioned me or tagged me in a post, or written on my wall directly, and if I get any private messages. And that's actually all I need to know for Facebook. I unsubscribe from a lot of posts too if I comment on something and then there's a big thread that comes after it, but it's not directly related to me, like people aren't tagging me in it, then I'll unsubscribe myself from it. So moving on, number 3 is that I create a specific time at night that will be a screen-free zone. This is really important for just creating some boundaries, where usually it's not so strict that there's an exact time, but by the time that I finished my work and had dinner and did a little bit of personal, entertainment and like playing on my Spanish app, Duolingo, so I can learn my language, or maybe writing an email to friends or checking in or getting on FaceTime with my mom or something like that. Once I'm finished all of that, I usually have a screen-free time. I will say that I don't really watch hardly any TV, not even TV on the internet or Netflix or anything like that. Maybe I watch an hour per week at most. I've consciously avoided like any shows that, if anyone talks about like binge watching a show, I pretty much consciously avoid it just because my time is really precious to me. And if I want to achieve, like I said, if I want to achieve what I want to do in the world, I don't really have time to binge watch House of Cards. But that's not a judgment on people that do, and it's not to say that I wouldn't like these shows, because I'm sure that I would, and that's actually the point, is I know as soon as I start Game of Thrones, for example, that I'm probably going to watch all, 5 or 6 seasons, however many seasons there are now. So I consciously create that barrier for myself too, and just watch shows that I can happily sort of dip in and out.
I want to get you. 'Cause I want to get you.
So another thing that I do to take take my power back from the internet, is I schedule out specific time in my workday to connect on social media, and then I have another time to answer emails, and another time to perform research or actively look for inspiration online. And what I mean by this is, like, when I create my weekly schedule, I make sure that I have time scheduled in my day to go on social media. So rather than just avoiding it altogether, which is not good for me. I mean, my business is online and I like to be on social media. I do enjoy it. I do personally enjoy like being on Facebook and Twitter, but I'll create specific times in my day. So I'll say, okay, schedule out between 4 and 5 p.m. to be on social media, but to be active on social media. So posting on different Facebook groups, answering questions that people have asked me, and trying to provide as much help and value as I can within that hour. And I may also schedule like small bursts of 15 minutes here and there. So like at 10 a.m., I'm going to check social media, and at 7 p.m., I'll also check social media. So I try to create these little short bursts too of times when I can go on and check in and see what people are doing and answer any questions and things like that. But I like to schedule a longer block of time, so more of a marathon rather than a sprint, of when I'm going to spend about an hour on social media, really consciously connecting, developing relationships and being helpful and making sure that I'm providing some value for the people who have decided to follow me or friend me or join my Facebook group, things like that. So that's been working out really well for me. And I also take the time to schedule 2 times during the day. And this is not immediate. So I've seen people say, people have said, okay, so don't check your email when you first start work, and wait until you've created the most important task for the day. So wait until you've written the blog post or did your top priority, and then check your email. I usually go by this, but then I also want to realize that, some people have a job or a position where like you do actually need to check in immediately. And so I've heard someone say, and I forget who it is, but I have to, maybe find this out to see who the person is. And they said that, when you first start your day, give yourself like a window of 5 minutes, 3 minutes even. I think they said 3 minutes. Give yourself like a window of 3 to 5 minutes, say, to go through your email, run down the email, and just make sure there aren't any like fires. any like emergencies that you have to take care of, some really like, this has to be done, this is going to change the whole perspective of the day. So some days I like to do that. I don't do it every day, but some days I will just kind of check in, and especially if I've designated them as like client-based days where I'm going to do a lot of client-based work, I will just immediately, upon starting my work day, not upon starting my day, but when I actually sit down to work, I'll open up my email, run through it really quickly, hop on social media, run through it really quickly, just make sure there aren't any things that have to be dealt with right away or that will really disrupt the pattern of the day. So they're really going to change how I would work for the rest of the day. And then I shut it down. I shut down the email client. I sign off of social media. I don't stay signed in. I make sure that I sign off of Facebook, sign off of Twitter, so that way if I get into the mentality of like, oh, I'm just going to, before you know it, your fingers are typing out Facebook and you haven't even made the conscious decision to go to Facebook. If I do that, which I do that sometimes, I'll get to a page where I have to sign in. And that is enough of a reminder for me to just say, oh, I'm not supposed to be here right now. This isn't the right time for me to be on Facebook. I've already decided that 4 p.m. I'm going to go on Facebook. So I find that is sometimes enough of a deterrent for me to stay away from Facebook and Twitter. But in regards to email, I usually pick, 2 times a day, say like 11 p.m. and 4 p.m. Depending on the day and the volume of the email, maybe it's a half an hour, maybe it's 45 minutes or an hour to sit down and really respond to emails. I find for the amount of volume that I get personally for emails, that an hour between 11 a.m. to 12 noon is enough for me to respond to all of the emails. And then if I, check again at 4 p.m., then if some more emails come in, it doesn't take me a full hour to respond to those emails. So yeah, I really like that schedule. And the other cool thing is that I like to just create some time in my schedule to just search for inspiration. And I do that by following various blogs, which we'll get into in a little bit, and how I kind of manage that and what tool that I use. But like blogs that I love, or go on Pinterest, or just allow myself to serendipitously fall into some beautiful inspiration that will help me. And I think it is important to actually schedule that time in too. I usually do it over my lunch break. I sort of have like an unofficial lunch break. I'll make myself like a nice healthy lunch, and I sit down and I pull out the iPad, because I find for some reason my iPad is more conducive to being inspired. I think that just the way that it's so easy to hold in my hand, and I think that Pinterest looks really nice on the iPad. I'll pull out the iPad, I'll spend the next 20 minutes or so, maybe even 30 minutes, just like being inspired and just finding some things, inspiration of like either what to create in the future, or something I'd like to write about, or maybe even something that I'd like to podcast about at some point. Yeah, so that was all about like scheduling specific times for social media. And the next one that I wanted to talk about is, it's more of a question for you really, and a question that I had asked myself is, it's like in business or in your personal life, I think that it's important to ask yourself if you need to be on every social media platform. When I first started out, not when I first started out, but a few years ago, I was on every social media platform that you could be on, because I kind of felt like that's the best thing that I could do for my business, was really spread my reach and be on lots of different social media platforms. And what I found is that it actually just spread me really thin, and I wasn't getting as much work done because I was spending all this time like posting on Google Plus, or trying to think of trying to make YouTube videos or something like that. And I had to sit down, and what I used was metrics. So I asked myself, like, where was my greatest return on investment, and where did most of my website referrals come from? So I used Google Analytics to track that. And the third metric, which was for me the most important, was asking myself, which social media platforms did I actually enjoy using? So it wasn't just a matter of what the data was saying, but also what was my heart and what was my stress level and my enjoyment level saying. And what it was saying to me is that I liked places where I could communicate. And so I started to prioritize more building my Facebook group where I can have like real life conversations, and quite often the conversations are in real time. I can have real life conversations with people. I went on Twitter, and Twitter was a good place, for me to really do my business, and then decided that a podcast would be a great idea, and eventually, or starting next week actually, be moving into webinars too, because I love teaching and I love connecting and I love communicating. But I asked myself, will I be taking many photographs, So my answer was kind of no. Like, I didn't really see Instagram. I am on Instagram personally, it's half personal and half business, but I don't use it to the capacity that it could be used because it's not actually a social media medium that I feel all that jazzed about. And Pinterest is kind of the same. I do like Pinterest. I love creating boards, but my return on investment for Pinterest is really, really low. I have, maybe 1 out of every 100 people that comes to my website comes from Pinterest. So I just realized, and YouTube was the same. For me, it was stressful to be making the videos constantly, and I just found that it wasn't really a medium that I wanted to work with. So this is me giving you permission to say that you don't have to be on every social media account, either personal or for business. And that, going back to this, you're the curator of your own internet. You're also the curator of your own social media planet. And so you don't have to be where it doesn't light you up.
I want to get you. 'Cause I want to get you.
Okay, so this is one of those things that I love to do and I love talking about, but I know as soon as I say it, you're probably going to groan and be like, I don't want to do it. But I promise you, if you spend a day or two doing this next technique, you will feel so much more empowered about your internet and social media experience, and it's going to make your life a lot less stressful and more pleasant anytime that you go online. And that is choosing a day to ruthlessly cull. By cull, I mean delete, unsubscribe, unfollow everything that is not lighting you up right now. Anything that is not making you feel good. This is like so much work at first. Here's how I did it. I spent a day, I sat down and I hand deleted. I have a Facebook account. I have like a personal one, and then I have a Facebook group, and I have a Facebook page for my business. And I spent a day going through my personal Facebook and hand deleting everyone that I was not going to have. The criteria was anyone that I didn't know in real life, want to know digitally, was really curious about creating. I left people on there that I was curious about creating a relationship with in the future, whether in person or online. Those are my criteria. So I wanted to keep it small. I didn't want to be someone who had 1,000 personal Facebook friends. I just think that that's overwhelming. I wanted to keep it about 150 people maybe. Not that the number was very specific for me or that the number really mattered. It was more just keeping it, having the question of do I really want to know what this person's up to? So I went through and it was so much work. You have to delete everyone by hand. There's not just a bulk, or at least at the time, there wasn't a bulk delete button. So I went through, I deleted everyone. There were some people that I had to keep, and I'm sure you know this, that there's some people you have to keep on for strategic reasons, either like they have a hot temper or they're just like an aunt that's going to be upset if they find out that you defriended them on Facebook. So I kept on anyone that like for political or some kind of strategic reasons, it would be rude to delete them. But I didn't really want to see what they posted, either because I wasn't very interested. Our likes were really different, like they are really conservative and I'm not, or their political views are really different than mine, or they tend to be a negative Nancy online and a Debbie Downer, the type, like they're always kind of just, the world's going to end tomorrow. And I would just use Facebook tool to unfollow them. And you can find this out online, like how to do this really easily, but I would stay friends with them, but I would unfollow them from my feed. So I would never get to see on my feed anything that they posted again. This for me was really brilliant. Giving that power to say, even on Facebook, I want to curate what I see. I follow pages of like brands and publications and interesting people that I really want to hear what they say. I follow friends that I think they definitely deliver value to my life, whether it's through humorous entertainment or just in being their beautiful selves or sharing what they share. So I made sure to go through and I curated everything. I curated all of the groups that I'm in, and I just make sure that they're groups that I like to be a part of. So I try to consistently go through and spend some time culling and deleting and unfollowing and shifting this up. And it's not just about Facebook. It's also about the blogs that I follow, the podcasts that I follow and listen to, the email subscriptions that I'm part of, the people that I follow on Twitter. I make an opportunity to regularly go through, and just like I would in my closet or in anything in my life or in my, the condiments in my fridge, I go through and I just say, like, this needs to go. Bam, 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 bam. Unemotional, dispassionate about it, just looking at it objectively. Like, does this add or subtract to my life? Everything should add. They should all add. Does this add? You don't want to keep a piece in your wardrobe that subtracts from the way that you look. And I feel the same way about neutral things. It's like, I don't want to follow something. I don't want to follow a blog that I'm lukewarm about. I want to follow a blog because it gives me actionable content. I read every post that they put, because the more that you curate and intentionally control the messages that you see on the internet and in social media, the more value is going to be provided in your life, because you're actually going to see things that you really care about. And, whether it's like really cool recipes that you want to, there's only so much, there's just almost only so much like human bandwidth that we have, and only so many hours in the day. And the more that you clog up your feeds with things that don't enthrall you, don't inspire you, don't provide value for your day, you're just really watering down the messages of people who you would love to get through to you. So yeah, like I said in the beginning, it sucks to do it. It sucks to take that day and be like, oh, I'm just gonna, get rid of all this stuff. But it feels so great at the end of it when you go on and you just see the stuff that you want to see. So cool. I really recommend it. And then just a little like side note, specifically for unsubscribes for email lists. So like things that I subscribe to. I have kind of like an unspoken like rule about that if I see in my email inbox that I subscribe to a newsletter, and maybe I get like 3 or 4 of the newsletters, and I realize like, oh, you know what? I haven't opened any of those newsletters, any of those like topics. And I don't think that in the future that I'll really be that interested in it. I unsubscribe immediately. I just make sure that like I'm only on email newsletters where like the person that I'm part of their newsletter, they provide lots of value. I'm entertained by them, I'm educated by them, and I just overall like their personality, and I really like the content that they provide to me, like on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis. So that's just a little side note there of like my policy for unsubscribing. It's like if I get 3 or 4 and I'm like, no, I haven't opened this, then the odds are that I probably won't. So I'm not going to get around to it. Okay, last of the techniques, and thank you so much for sticking around and going through all these techniques with me. This is to consider a short or a long digital sabbatical. I promise that the world won't end if you decide to take a weekend away from social media, and or even do something wild like delete your Facebook account or delete your Twitter profile or delete an app on your phone that just isn't lighting you up anymore. All of these things steal your bandwidth, they steal your time. If they're not lighting you up and they're not providing value to your life, then it's time to break up with them. If you are going to do a digital sabbatical, whether for a weekend or a day or even, one day a week on Sundays, you're not going to go online. You're going to do things analog, go for a walk, go for a run, read a real book, things like that. If you're going to go on a longer digital sabbatical, especially if you have a business, it's important to just let people know so they can know that they're not going to see you online, and you can use things like your profile picture or your timeline cover photo to just announce to people, hey, I'm on a digital sabbatical, or whatever you want to call it. Taking some time off. This is what I'll be doing instead. This is where you can find me in an emergency, etc. Or even don't let people find you in the case of an emergency. It's totally up to you. It's your thing. Take your power back. It's yours to take. It's your life. You're not going to get the things done in your life that you want to do if you spend all your time just being clogged up, waterlogged, drained, stressed out by social media, the internet, and all of this stuff. So, what kind of tools and apps can you use to help make this process run a little bit smoother and be a little bit easier? Here are some things that I use. These are all things that I use personally and that I can attest to. You can find some links to them on the show notes. Again, that link was at thesepodreview.com/episodes/004. So you can find all the links to that here. First thing that I use is Buffer. I use Buffer to schedule all my social media posts. I do this on a Monday. It's always a part of my Monday schedule. I spend about an hour scheduling roughly, 40 tweets for the week or something like that. And then I have, I schedule out some Facebook posts for my business page, and then also some posts for my Facebook group. So we do a question in the group. We do a question per day. So I'll preload the questions. So that way, when 4:00 rolls around and the question goes up on the group, I am able to spend more time actually sitting there providing value, answering the question, giving feedback, rather than worrying about actually posting. So Buffer has been a really great asset for me to just spend that hour on a Monday, pre-post, pre-schedule all of my posts. And then it's not about not being on social. It's just about actually going on social to communicate. So the next cool tool that I use is something called Rescue Time, which is free. Rescue Time, I use it to track where I spend my time. So it's an app that runs in the background of my laptop, and at the end of the week or at any given time really, I can just log into the dashboard and it will tell me how and where I'm spending my time. I get to designate certain websites or apps as either being productive or not productive, distracting, and it has a really good, Rescue Time itself has a really good handle on the pulse of whether something is productive or distracting. So I didn't really have to do a lot of customization to let it know that. The only thing I had to do specifically is because I do a lot of work on websites. Often it was if I was working on a client's website, it would label that as a distracting time because they would think that I wasn't working, where I had to just set and say, okay, if such and such.com is part of my productive work because this is actually working for a client. So it might take a little bit of customizing to get it to a place of perfection, but what's really cool about it is I get to see exactly how much screen time that I'm spending per week. I mean, I'm not using it for my mobile phone or my iPad, so I do have to add a little bit of time every day to say, okay, I'll probably spend another hour on a mobile device or tablet. But it gives me, in general, an overview about how much time I'm spending here, there, and social media. And I do, like I was saying, I do have a weekly schedule that I try to stick to, but you know that you don't always stick to the schedule that you put out, and sometimes projects take me a little bit longer than I expected them to. So I feel like Rescue Time it's a really cool tool to keep me knowledgeable about not only how much screen time I'm having in a week, and but also like how I'm spending that time online. What kind of things am I doing online, and how much social media time am I spending versus how much time I'm spending, say, writing or creating content. So I think you might like that one. Another one that, oh man, this one was so good for me. It changes so many things, and I don't know. You might think it's a bit extreme, but for me, it was just beautiful. It's a Chrome extension, so it's for the Chrome browser, and it's called Newsfeed Eradicator. And what it does is it turns off your Facebook newsfeed, and it gives you an inspirational quote instead. And I don't always love the quotes, but I just love the idea of it. So when I'll run you through like what I see when I log on to Facebook. So when I log on to Facebook, I see the left-hand panel, so I see all of my groups and I see messages and things like that. I see the top panel, so I can see if I have any new messages and if I have any new notifications, and I can access all of that just fine. I can access all of my messages and all my notifications. And I do annoyingly see the right-hand sidebar with ads and things like that too. What I don't see is the newsfeed. The newsfeed is completely blank and replaced just with a quote. And usually it's a quote that's inspirational or like about productivity, you know, like this is like your best life, and in order to be in your best life, you have to like take the bull by the horns and do your work. So that's not a direct quote, but something like that, where it just reminds me, get back to work. You know, this is not time to play. It's time to go do the work. So I love it so much. I don't see any of the BS, like stupid little posts that you normally see all day in Facebook and just scrolling through the mindless feeds. Even though I try to curate it as best as possible, it still is such a time suck. So I just thought, I don't want to see this Facebook feed unless I really, really choose to. And you can still see your feed, but you just have to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to see it. Now, if I wanted to say there's a group that I was really excited about seeing what people posted over the last day, I can just click on the group and I can see the group just fine. It really is just eradicating the news feed. And that constant, like, as soon as you see it, you're kind of pulled down into the next 4 or 5 posts that are in your view. And then the next thing you know, you're scrolling and you're clicking on a few different things, and 45 minutes have passed and you haven't gotten done today what you wanted to do. So that is a really cool tool that I definitely recommend, especially if you're using Google Chrome. I haven't found anything that will eradicate my newsfeed on my mobile phone. So if anybody knows of like an back in the day, an iPhone app or an iPad app that will eradicate your newsfeed in Facebook, I would be appreciative of that. But having said that, I don't even have the Facebook app on my phone because I like to make it a bit of a challenge for myself to get into social media. Any small barriers that I can place between myself and the things that are distracting to me, I see that as a good thing. So another tool that I use, I talked a little bit about it before, about how I give myself some time to just experience inspiration and absorb some inspiring content. And I use Feedly. to put together all my blogs that I read in one place and just give myself 20 to 30 minutes per day, usually during my lunch break, to peruse these blogs. Now, the blogs also, as you would expect from me, are a really highly curated list of blogs that I find really inspiring. I appreciate all their content. Some are marketing, some are design, some are business, some are copywriting. Maybe at some point in the future, I could do a little podcast about what I'm following and what I find lots of inspiration from and what I'm reading. I probably only follow about 20 to 30 blogs, which isn't a lot considering that I think a lot of people are probably following hundreds of blogs. And for the same reason that I don't want to get overly clogged or waterlogged or bogged down with tons of content. I just want to be reading the stuff that I think is really cool and interesting and helpful. So, or beautiful, inspiring to look at. So yeah, Feedly is the place where I put it all together. It's a convenient app. I have it on my iPad. I have it on my phone, and I can also see it in my browser. Just puts everything together really beautifully, and you can just scroll right past things you can dip in here and there. I also give myself some time to go on Pinterest too, but that's not necessarily a tool. But just to say, when I give myself the inspiration, it's usually either Feedly or Pinterest that I'm using for that inspiration. Just two more little apps and things that I wanted to talk about. The first one is, it's called Unroll Me. And I don't use this as much anymore as I used to in the past, just because I've haven't been subscribing to as many mailing lists as I used to. Unroll Me is just a really cool way to, it takes all of your online subscriptions and basically rolls them up for you and delivers them in a package every day. So you'll see like what's come in from your email. So rather than getting the list blast one by one and clogging up your email, and you can see if there's anything that's worth reading in your little package of digital subscriptions. And the other thing that Unroll Me is really good at is it helps you to unsubscribe from a lot of different newsletters that you probably didn't even know you were on. It will tell you like, oh, I was really astounded when I got it because it told me I was maybe subscribed to like 300 different newsletter subscriptions. I had no idea. And I've been trying for the last 6 months or so to operate under a zero inbox policy, which is working really well. And I'm not super strict with myself, but I like to get my inbox down to a nice, clean, clear zero emails, which just feels so nice to see and say. Maybe I'll do thinking about doing a podcast episode in the future about zero inbox and how I got to that state and what kind of tools that I use to do that and what mindset shifts I use and organizational tools as well. But anyway, Unroll Me let me know that I was part of 300 subscriptions. I had no idea. So I very promptly unsubscribed from a ton of them and unrolled several more. And then there's a few that I really love to get that I don't want to roll them up. I want to get them as they come in. I just love them. Specifically, which one did I point out? Danielle Laporte's email blasts. I love them. I always read them. Marie Forleo. Always read hers. Always just want to get them as soon as it comes in. Alexander Franzen is someone that I really admire as a writer and just as a person. So, and Zen Habits is also one that I tend to read as soon as it comes in. So I wouldn't unroll those, but I would maybe roll up some of the smaller mailing list subscriptions that I read from time to time. I don't want to necessarily unsubscribe because I do find value in what they provide, but I don't, read the email immediately like the little fangirl that I am. So there you have it, guys, and Kat specifically, who had asked the question. That is my really in-depth answer to what I see as is quite a deep and a pretty big problem, issue that a lot of people face, which is feeling powerless in the face of the internet or social media, especially business owners that just feel completely overwhelmed. I see a lot of business owners that are spending so much time on social media because I feel like that's what they have to do. That's what they've been told to do. And they're actually not spending time creating or growing or thinking big thoughts, those big visionary thoughts that are required, in creativity and bringing your business forward and moving things forward into a more productive place. I recognize that in myself, that I wasn't taking enough time unplugging and just creating. And that doesn't mean like creating an analog or just like, I just mean unplugging from social media and unplugging from all of the have-tos and shoulds and musts, and actually just spending time pleasantly creating, whether it was something, like a PDF or putting together a presentation or a webinar, writing a blog post, or making a podcast. There's really so much growth and value that will come out of performing those tasks, those not unnecessary, but the kind of tasks that aren't like first of mind, where you've got the fire tasks, which is writing back to emails and redoing all the responses and doing client stuff and doing the things that have to be done. That is important. Then there's the tasks of like connecting and being on social media. But then there's another different part of the task, and there's another like quadrant, I guess you might say, that are the non-necessary things, but they're important to create some content, to create some kind of artistic work, or write a blog post, or create a course, or do something that is like of incredible value for your business and for the people that follow you. Unless you make intentional, mindful choices in your digital life, it's going to be really tricky to find the time to do this. But the time is there. It just will take a little bit of organizing so that you can actually find the time and sit down and say, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours this morning or 2 hours every morning, not in my email inbox, not on social media, not doing anything but consciously, mindfully creating something new for my business or something new for your life. It doesn't even have to be in your business, but until you make the decision, until you shift your mindset away from feeling powerless in the face of the internet, you will really struggle to find the time to be able to do this. And, if I can leave you with anything, since we're just about out of time here, I feel like the most important thing is really just consciously developing a sense of appreciation for the tools, seeing the internet and social media and email as tools, appreciating them as such, but knowing that at the end of the day, it is you that creates and controls the relationship. You have the power. You have the power to make smart, intentional choices that will provide more time in your day, provide more happiness, and less stress. So, good luck. Let me know how it goes. Also, let me know if you have any tools that you think are really helpful that you'd like to share, and then I can add them to the show notes so other people can get exposed to them as well. Before we go, I just wanted to update you on a few things. The first thing, as I mentioned a few times in the podcast, there's a thriving digital community aspect of this podcast. It's a cool place for you to meet other spirited entrepreneurs. Maybe even find an accountability partner, get inspired, or share your business, or things like your latest blog post, etc. You can find your invitation as well as other details about the show on thesepodreview.com. So you'll find a place to sign up, and then when you sign up, you'll receive an invitation to join the group. It's pretty simple. And secondly, the other things I wanted to say is that I'd love to invite you to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It's really important to receive reviews for the show, just because it allows the podcast to be spread out to people who don't otherwise have the opportunity to listen to the show. So I love it. It makes me happy. I love to hear your comments. I love to hear what you're thinking about the show. And I do things a little bit differently. So once you've left your review, take a screenshot of it and email the screenshot to thesepodreview@gmail.com, and you'll be automatically entered into a monthly contest to win a Spirited Entrepreneur gift pack. This is totally optional. You don't have to do it. You can just leave a review and not send the screenshot. But if you want to be entered into the contest to receive that gift pack, you can just email it over to us. It's thesepodreview@gmail.com. You can also find additional instructions about how to subscribe and leave a review, plus things like show notes, how to submit a question, recommend a guest, or contact me at thesepod.com. And you can also find me on Twitter at Hey Nicole Harlow, for those of you who haven't gone out and deleted your Twitter account once you listen to this podcast. Oh, the Spirited Entrepreneur podcast is sponsored by the folks over at Audible. They've been really generous and have offered an audiobook of your choice completely free to all listeners of the show. So a book that I think really ties in beautifully with the theme of today's show is The Power of Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. I think that would just be like a super read in connection with creating powerful habits that we were talking about today. So to download your free copy of The Power of Habit, you can go to audibletrial.com/spirited. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spirited. And download The Power of Habit, or choose from the 180,000 titles that are also available, if you don't necessarily want to have my suggestion. This is Nicole Harlow, and until next time, have a great day. Bye, guys.